Hey everybody, this is the fourth video in the map series, and it will be the last video here. We're going to look at just one thing today. It's the achievement status and growth summary with quadrant chart. That's a mouthful, but it's good information. So if you're on your growth reports page and you scroll down, you'll see right here, you'll see the quadrant chart, right? So achievement status and growth summary with quadrant chart. Okay, so we're going to open this up. We're going to select our class. And you'll want to select the most current. I'm going to just select the last time I had students, right? So you can click fall to winter, winter to winter. You could do fall to spring. You can do fall to fall. It just depends on, this is a winter test. That's why it gives me those options. So make sure you know what you're looking at. So I'm not going to show you everything on this. I do have a sample here, but I just wanted to show you a couple of features. So for one, you have your information up at the top, right? When you took the test, all that good stuff. But this is something that is very fluid. And the reason you would use this chart is if you're trying to look at some of your, subgroups, you can break it down, and that's good information to have. And sometimes, we just have to be really honest with, who's being successful and who's not being successful in our class, and what can we do to fix that? That's the big thing. Just as a for instance, I had a year where we taught fifth grade, where we had pretty good map growth in the middle of the year, but when we looked at the chart and broke it down, we had one particular subgroup that was not doing as well as the others. And so instead of just saying, well, that's just a coincidence or whatever, we had to take a hard look. And one of the things that we did is we introduced a lot more diverse literature. And in fact, we wrote a grant for it. So it's a great opportunity to kind of change course and make those adjustments to make sure that every student and every population of students is receiving the best education they can. So this is the sample. And as you can see, you can click show student names or show or not show that. So this is my actual chart, I have it clicked off so you can't see the student names. And it gets pretty busy, right? So, but if you have it clicked on, you can actually see which students are which. And you can click on or put your mouse over any of these graphics, and it will show you who the student is. It'll show you some information. So as you can see here, Dayton, they've put their mouse over that spot, right? And it shows his percentile, his conditional growth percentile. So he grew a pretty good amount, but his achievement score was not high, right? And you can see that he's in the quadrant labeled low achievement, high growth. That's why he's there, right? His projected growth is 5. He grew 6 points, so he grew more than they expected, which is why he has high achievement. He's not all the way up on that chart. He didn't grow, double the expectation, but he did grow more. And then you have the conditional growth index and observed growth, but the big ones you're going to be really looking at is percentile and how much they grew, right? So as I look at this chart, we want kids to kind of live, hopefully in the green, obviously, right? And so let's look at each section. The pink is low achievement, low growth. They scored, their score is not where we want it to be, and they didn't grow very much. They may have dropped points, or they may have only grown, a point or two, but they did not meet their goal. So pink is where you want to avoid students being, at all costs, right? Low score, low growth. If you look over here in the yellow, this is, a better place to be, but this would be when you have students who have a high achievement but low growth. So those are the kids who at the start of the year have a high score, and they may be above or well above grade level, but then as you test them in the winter or in the spring, you test them again, and they didn't grow very much. They're high, and they stayed high, but they didn't actually grow, or they didn't grow much at all. And so in that case, if you're looking at that mid-year, you'd be saying those are the kids who need more enrichment. They need their own tiered instruction. We think of tier instruction, tier time as kind of bringing kids up, but it's also should be about pushing kids forward. And so if you're in the high achievement, low growth category, then what you really need is someone to be pushing your thinking and giving you more depth than maybe some of the other students get. because it may be that you understand concepts fairly quickly, or you maybe you even have some of these concepts down. And so, we don't want to move you ahead grade by grade by grade, because that's just kind of pushing the problem down to the next year or the year after. We want to take what we're learning in class right now and help you exceed those standards. That would be, if you think of a proficiency scale, these would be students who can basically already score a 3. We want to move them to that 4 level where they can do more, right? In the upper left-hand corner, kind of this orangish color, it's low achievement but high growth, and that's not a bad place to be. It shows that we're working towards moving them over into the high achievement category. So this is maybe a student who scored, a lower score than you'd expect or that you'd hope, below grade level. So they didn't achieve at a very high level, but as you've been working with them, they have improved and improved and improved, right? So, again, the example here is Dayton. He scored in the 42nd percentile. Well, that's in the average range, but it's certainly in the low part of the average range, for that 40 to 60 or 41 to 60. And so, he's not a student who's achieving at a high level right now, but he has made the entire growth that he was expected and more. And so if you can continue to make more growth than you expect, he will continue to move over into hopefully that high achievement category, and certainly at least hopefully being fully on grade level. So this is not a bad place to be, but it shows we still have more work to do. But if you're in that category, it shows that some of the things that we're doing are working, and so we just want to make sure we target that a little bit more. And then of course, the green is high achievement, high growth, which is, it's where you want to be. Hey, I scored really well, and then I made my growth. I scored really well again, and I made my growth. So, high achievement. And again, the farther to the right and the farther up you go, the better off you are in terms of the test score, right? So, Drew here, right? He's where the 90th, or the 90 and then the 80 meet. So he's scoring a high percentile, and he's also a high percentile in terms of conditional growth. So he's grown more than most of the kids in his area have grown. Now, what I want to show you, and these are actual scores, so I'm going to make sure I don't put my cursor over any of those, those little pluses or boxes there. You can obviously take the colors off, but I'm not going to show student names, but I normally would if I was just looking at my own kids' scores, right? But here's what's really cool, is this is where you can really start to break it down. And I advise anyone to take a little bit of time and look at this for both your math scores and your reading scores. So if I want to just look specifically at reading, I'm going to unclick math. And so what you saw before, you saw all those dots. Well, I didn't have all those kids in class. I had, 20 kids or 22 kids, whatever it was. But they had both of them on there. So now I've taken math off. So these are my English or my reading scores from that year, from the mid-year, right? And so you can tell, I'm not going to touch the cursor here, but you can tell there's a student up here who achieved a very high score, but also then exceeded their growth. So that's outstanding. You have some students here who are kind of borderline, right? So they're kind of in that middle space of, they've had good growth, like we're moving them in the right direction, but we want them to continue to grow and continue to achieve a little bit higher. Just by weird coincidence, I didn't have anyone who was low achievement, high growth in this category, but usually you'll have kids there, and I've had kids there many times where they've grown a lot, but we still want to make sure that we get them there, and we had a couple that were moving in that direction. And then this category down here, you have students who, the score wasn't exactly where you want them to be, but, and we had more work to do as far as the growth as well. So the important thing is, when you look at the categories here, is to take a minute and just think about, who is where and why. And there are a lot of reasons why. You're not going to get all the answers from this test, but if I look at that pink category and I think, well, I know, and I know this, 3 of those students have an IEP. 2 of those students are received ELL services, and so it's real easy to start kind of making you don't intend it to be excuses, but it starts to sound like excuses. And so I think when you look at this data, it's good to, kind of break it down, but it's also important to start thinking about, what do we have to overcome and how do we do that for every student, and not to think, well, this student didn't achieve because X, this student didn't achieve because Y, right? We don't want that to be the case. We want to say, let's have a real honest conversation with ourselves. What can we do to overcome the barriers? Okay, so if I click it over here, now I'm looking at only math. And so, we had students who were in that high achievement, high growth area. We had some students who were they achieved high, but they didn't, necessarily grow a ton. You had, I'm not going to click, but there's a student right above my cursor here who was real close to moving into that category, right? But not quite there. And then we had some students who, they didn't score where they wanted to score at the start of the year, and they still weren't necessarily on grade level, but they had a lot of growth. And so we knew some things were working. And so I had one student who was in the low achievement, low growth category. And that's, I would look at all of the students, but that's a student I for sure would focus on and say, okay, what can I do a little bit differently with this student? So when you get down here, you can really break it down even just a little bit more. And, you can look at all your male students. You can look at all your female students, right? And say, okay, what's different, right? And you can unclick and you can look at, what are we looking at, math? So you can look at math, you can look at reading, you can, you can look at your different subgroups. And so again, that's one of the things, just being totally honest, that's one of the things that we noticed a few years ago when we looked at, hey, we need more, we're doing some good things with teaching skills, but we need more diverse books. And so that was one of the things that we kind of dove into this data, and that's one of the things that we did when we looked at it and we said, okay, we're not going to make excuses. What can we do to make this a better experience for every student and make sure that they're getting the same kind of things out of it? So they're all getting the same type of teaching because we're the same teachers that we were, but how can we make it a better experience for some of these subgroups? So, this is where you can really break down and look at, equitable practices. And sometimes, just having an honest conversation with yourself and your peers makes a big difference there because, again, the thing that I always caution against is just the data is just information, and the data is what it is, and so we can't go back and change, what it was when they took the test, but we can make some changes to improve the data and make it into what we want it to be. And so I think, we've looked at a lot of different, informational summaries, things like that, different areas of map that you can look at. And I know there's a lot of information there, but I think as you are planning your instruction and you're sharing information with parents and you're making sure that you have equitable practices, for one test, and it is just one test, but you get a lot of information from this test. So I hope this was helpful and beneficial, and you can always schedule a time to meet with me about any of the map reports or anything in general, of course. But if there's anything that you want to dive in a little bit deeper and look specifically with your kids, even beyond our data sorts that we'll do, we can do that for sure. So anyway, I hope everyone has a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.